To the Rules and Government Committee meeting for October 22nd. Thank you to the very full crowd that is here. And we moved committee rooms for those who might be listening or on their way on council phone. We're in room 1050. 50, yeah, 10, thank you. 1050. We've got some very...
1060.
1060. Sorry. 1060. We have a very full agenda and some very important items that we have put together. 8 proposals for the March ballot, the city ballot, when we have our municipal elections and city-held elections. A number of items having to do with our retirement benefits, some of the operations of the city, our voting, and our power initiatives are all before us today. So we've got a very full agenda. I want to try to make sure we can get as much public comment in as possible for each of these items as well. But if we can take up items 5 and 8 first. I've read all the paperwork on that, and Mr. Zine, I don't know if you have any questions on 5 or 8.
5 and 6.
All right, it's on the special
5 and
meeting?
6.
Okay, so we have to do that as a special meeting separately?
Okay. The special meeting starts at 3:15.
Okay.
And since
So
it's
we'll wait on that one. So let's just take up item 5 then first. Do we have any questions on 5, Mr. Zine?
No, not really.
I can probably save you guys all time. You're for it? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
That is the dependent children.
That's what Ryan has to accuse.
It's not.
No, that is not the one. He's going to recuse himself on number 6. So if there's no objection, I will move item number 5. Why don't you give us just a quick description of what it is, and then we will go ahead and move that.
Yes, Thomas Simonowski from the CAO. And item number 5 is basically a continuation of dependent child benefits in the fire and police pension system. I would require a charter amendment, which would require a vote of the electorate. And basically, currently, the current provision, it would pertain to a dependent child that either marries or is adopted. And that definition of a dependent child is a disabled individual. And right now, the way the provision is set up, if they do become married or are adopted, they would lose the surviving benefit. And so this charter amendment would effectively allow a disabled dependent child to continue receiving the benefit.
Okay. All right. Well, I will go ahead and move approval of what is before us. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Bill Raggio with Fire and Police Pensions. There are 2 items that I'd like to point out on this. One is essentially a technical correction. The motion as drafted by Councilmember Hahn's office covers tiers 2 through 5 only. We'd like to have it changed to reflect tier 1 also. That was an oversight on our part as we worked with the council office and drafted the motion.
When did tier 1 take effect?
And that's in the CA report, or is there no?
No, it is not.
Okay. So we'll make that change for tier 1 as well.
What year did tier 1 take effect? Tier 1, what year?
Oh, it hasn't been around for a long
I know, how
time,
long?
but there could be children of the members still around.
But they'd probably be adults by now in their 60s?
This is an adult benefit.
I understand that, but tier 1 started many, many years ago. And I'm questioning
Closed in
what
the
the age would, 70s?
Closed in the 70s.
We still have approximately 350 members, retired members, tier 1 members. So when they decease is when we would find their child to be a dependent child. We don't make that determination until the member deceases.
And their child, to be a dependent child, has to be reliant on the family. So that would be an adult child in their 60s or 50s?
They do not
Would
have
be
to
a dependent child?
dependent.
I'm just trying to figure out the age
Well, of course, a
with tier 1, since it
retired
seemed many years
member
ago.
can have or adopt children at any age, so they could be very young people. I mean, it would be hard to tell.
But the person who's in tier 1, who has been retired, since tier 1's been gone for a number of years, those individuals would be in their 70s or 80s? The
Reasonable.
retired members? So it's unlikely they're going to have young children in
No,
70s or 80s.
But the only requirement is that the child was disabled prior to being 21 years old.
Still be older and disabled.
We have no idea how many would fall in that category?
No,
If
currently
any?
we have 13 dependent children who were from Tier 1 members. And approximately 350 Tier 1 members.
13 that are tier 1?
Yes. 13 dependent children from
Right,
Tier
from
1.
Tier 1. Their age category for those 13 children?
I'm sorry, I do not have that information. I can.
Because I would assume they're adults in the later
But the
years of
benefit
life.
still accrues to them.
No, I know, and I'm just trying to figure out that population and the age factor involved.
I'll see if we can get that information between here and council. We can get those
I
statistics.
mean, if they're 13 versus 40 or 50,
The other item, it was just pointed out to me that as currently drafted, the motion covers those dependent children currently receiving benefits, but it would not cover dependent children who have not received the benefit yet. So if they were married previously or adopted previously and they came to us with for benefits, we would have to deny them based on the current motion. So if the council or committee chooses, we would ask that, staff would ask that we have that revised to cover those folks as well. When the board considered this, I'm sure that the board thought that we were going to cover everybody who would fall into the category. But the way it's currently drafted, we'd have to treat them separately and have to come back potentially to have that revised as well.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments on that? Is that
well,
all sound good?
We're okay with that.
Let's make those two amendments then in our instructions to move this motion forward and direct the city attorney to begin to draft this for the ballot. But we'll make those two corrections.
I would note that there's another dependent child issue on the supplemental agenda, so that if both are approved, we
We'll make
would
the
be
same
recommending
changes.
consolidation of the two,
Consolidation of the two into one measure?
one charter amendment.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, let's go ahead then. It's not 3:30, so we can't take up that one, but when we do, we'll consolidate those two together. Okay. 3:50. Oh, 3:15, okay. So we got another 5 minutes to get there. Okay, we'll move approval of this without objection?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If we can move to number 2, and I know that our controller is here. I'd like to come forward on item number 2, if we can read that one, please.
Item number 2 is the CLA report in response to motion relative to directing the city administrative officer and CLA and requesting the city controller to develop the necessary language for a city charter amendment at the next available city election to clarify and better define the role of the city controller as it relates to the conduct of performance audits.
Great. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Maybe it makes more
Yeah, I was
sense.
gonna say, do you want
I
to go
think-
first, or do you
No,
want
I-
to go to CLA first?
I think probably I'd rather have the CLA go
Okay,
first.
well, we have
Thank you.
CLA report.
Okay. Very briefly, the report before you, as you know, there's been some discussion about a charter amendment to clarify what a program is in an elected office and the role of the authority of the controller to audit that. Also in those discussions, the issue of should a program be in the controller's office where the authority to audit that program would be as well. So before we have before you, we have suggested language or concepts that would define what a program is. And essentially, it would be programs that are, well, the language before you, first of all, has not related to the core functions, and I'll get to that in a moment. The other elements are formerly housed in non-elected departments or offices, programs receiving state or federal grant funds, and programs established by ordinance.
And when you have "and," it's cumulative, all three, or it's an "or"?
It would be or.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's really an "or."
it
So
is an
could be-
or.
It could be any one of those categories would trigger that would.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. With regard to state and federal grant
Should we make
funds,
that maybe a little clearer in the language, just to
Sure.
put "or," and it's actually "and/or,"
and or.
right? Because
Exactly.
some may have multiple.
Right. With regard to the core functions, certainly there was some discussion about exactly what that means, and Controller Chick and I have talked about that. And there is a proposed change, which I can read to you, which I would recommend. So the first element, rather than core functions, would be an activity, project, function, or entity with established goals and objectives that is funded by city resources. That comes directly from the definition of programs in government accounting principles. And I think because of the uncertainty about what a core function is, I think that's a reasonable change to make. And with that, I'll turn it over to the controller.
Okay. So I'm very pleased and satisfied with the language that's being recommended to this committee. You know, when the voters overwhelmingly approved the charter reform about 10 years ago, they gave the added power of performance auditing to the controller's office. And I'm speaking to one of your members, was a member of the elected charter Reform Commission, representing the 3rd Council District, I believe. Right. But that was all about giving the controller additional powers to achieve greater transparency and accountability. And I have never believed that the voters intended that there was going to be a carve-out of dollars that are inside elected officials' offices funding specific programs should be exempted from performance audits. So as you know, I have attempted to do, I think twice, audits of programs in the city attorney's office. City attorney interprets the charter. He interpreted the charter to exclude programs in elected officials' offices. I think you have before you a letter written by Erwin Chemerinsky. I know that the chair of the appointed Charter Commission has a different point of view. But this is all about putting language on the ballot to the public to ask what was their intent. It was my hope at the beginning of this endeavor, and I believe Mr. Chemerinsky's as well, to do something exceedingly simple, to just say the controller shall have the ability to audit all programs and departments. But I do understand the concern of wanting to keep checks and balances, the language that also allows for the council and mayor, or is it the CAO and mayor, to audit any programs that might occur in a controller's office. And I asked Farid Safir to come. He's the chief auditor in the controller's office, because he's really the expert in terms of both how programs are defined in, it's called GAGAS, Generally Accepted Government Accounting Standards. And in addition, because I understand the concern about the potential of an uncontrollable controller, I'm sure we're talking about the future and not the
Not
present.
you.
Right.
And maybe not the immediate future either.
Right. But at any rate, there really are built-in protections. You have the purse strings. If a controller is behaving in an inappropriate way and doing inappropriate audits, the council and mayor have the ability to squeeze tight on the next year's budget. And there are a couple of other things that are really in the professional end that I would like to have Farid address, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure, please.
Farid
Just
Safawi.
move the microphone a little closer. Some people listen on telephone.
Yeah, sure. Farid Safawi, City Controller. The audit division of the controller is a separate section of the controller's office. It is separate from the political offices of controller's office. It is comprised of professional auditors and what I call the wall between political activities and professional auditing. To start with, we have organizational separation, as I mentioned, that none of the auditors are at-will employees. They are civil service employees. They cannot be removed based on disagreement with findings, conclusion, or anything to that nature. And all of the auditors are supposed to have independence, meaning that they are not supposed to have impairment when conducting their audits. We are required to disclose any personal, organizational, any outside impairment as part of our audit. Also, once the audit starts, there's a safeguard regarding that too. Controller receives 2 briefings as part of the audit process. One at the outset of the audit that we discuss what we are planning to do. She will not receive any input. She's not going to receive any other briefing until we are substantially completed with audit process, meaning that we have already developed our audit issues, conclusions, and that's the time we present the findings to the controller. Controller cannot create a new findings. Controller cannot make decision to have a finding disappeared. It's just a matter of information for controller to move forward. Again, during the audit process, audit is guided by professional auditors. I have a number of CPAs with many years of experience in doing audit. They are the ones who are in charge of audit. They report directly to me, and controller and his political staff are not involved during the audit process. We also, what we call, have a third-party peer review. We are required, based on GAGAS, Government Auditing Standard, that we go through external peer review. Other organizations would come in and take a look at our processes, procedures, quality assurance control we have in place. If we do not meet the GAGAS independence, objectivity requirements, we will receive what we call a qualified opinion. Today, all of the report that we have received under Controller Chick, and also to my knowledge on the previous controller, they all have been unqualified opinion, meaning strict adherence with GAG's requirement in terms of being objective, independent in conducting our audits.
Okay. And Mr. Seale, it's your interpretation that the charter or city ordinance allows the auditing by mayor or council of management functions within the controller's office?
Yes.
Now, and so this just continues that?
Actually, no. There is suggested language that would make it clear. The council and the mayor clearly have the authority to do performance audits in addition to the controller in departments. This would make it clear that under the same definition of program, they could do it with the program in the controller's
Just to be
office.
clear in there, I mean, it doesn't preclude the mayor and council from conducting management studies or performance audits of any departmental operations as well.
That's correct.
I think that's the current language.
That is
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions, Kelly? Nope. All right. We will then move approval.
Great.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you
and
very
thanks
much.
for working with us on this. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Let us call the roll for the special meeting. And if we can open up the special meeting now and take up item 8.
This is communication from the Department of Fire and Police Pensions relative to placement on the March 3rd ballot of a city charter amendment to allow payment of pension benefits to a special needs trust for dependent disabled children, child benefit provided to a child of a deceased system member.
Okay. If we can add the same amendments on 6 that we did to item 5. And are there any questions? I'm sorry, just because it's such a packed agenda. It's the only reason we're going through. Do you have any? If not, if we can consolidate that in the direction of the city attorney, then to put that on a single ballot proposition, that would be great.
And the other one was number
Number
6?
Number 5.
Five.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
And why don't you?
I'm sorry. So add on to 8, the same as 5?
Yes,
Okay.
make the changes,
Five
but then
now.
consolidate the two of them into a single measure. And Mr. Zine, if you want to just step out for a second, we'll recuse yourself for number 6.
We'll be happy to.
We'll take that up. In case you get married again.
I doubt it.
Little editorial.
Let the
You have to
record
wait
reflect
to
that
read
Mr.
before-
Zine doubts that he will get married again, but you never know.
Well, before that passes.
Yes. Oh, before that passes. All right.
I'll restrain myself.
Yes, we all will. Cindy's just out of the room. All right, item 6.
This is a communication from the Department of Fire and Police Pensions and CAO to report relative to a post-retirement marriage surviving spouse benefit and placement of this matter on the March 2009 municipal ballot.
Great.
Okay, under the current provisions of the plan, a member can designate a surviving spouse or domestic partner benefit up to 1 year prior to retirement. And this provision would have a charter amendment change, and basically it would allow for the member to continue this survivor benefit once they have retired. And basically, in terms of the costs, the full actuarial costs would be paid by the member. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Anything else you'd like to add? No. Mr. Weiss, any questions? I've reviewed the paperwork as well, so I would move approval of this for approving the motion and asking the city attorney to draft necessary paperwork to prepare this for a ballot proposition. Thank you.
Thank
Easy
you.
enough?
Thank you.
We'll make it tougher next time, trust me. All right, if somebody will grab Mr. Zine from there. All right. Thank you, Ms. Dussault. That leaves us now with 1, 3, 4, and 7. If we can take up item 1, please.
Item number 1 is CLA report in response to motion relative to the implementation of an independent assessor position and placement of a measure on the March primary nominating election ballot that would amend the city charter to authorize an independent assessor. They would be appointed by and report to the Board of Fire Commissioners. John Wickham with the CLA's office. I'm pitch hitting for somebody.
All right.
This has been to the to a joint meeting of the Audits and Public Safety Committees. There's been discussion of having an independent assessor to address issues related to disciplinary hiring, training, human relations policies and procedures. A charter amendment. It was determined that a charter amendment might be necessary to address some of these issues.
I mean, the issue that is remaining after our public safety meeting on Monday required redrafting or smart drafting of this charter amendment so that it was clear that this new position had and only had assessing and auditing functions and did not have investigatory functions. And I was shown a draft that I think originated in the mayor's office, but I've been told all the stakeholders have seen and find acceptable. Is that correct?
Beatrice Lopez, Fire Commission staff. First of all, I'd like to begin by extending Commissioner Headley Hayes' regrets at not being able to attend the meeting today. She is out on business. But you're correct, Councilmember. The language has been drafted originating in the mayor's office, and the stakeholders have been contacted. We've discussed. Sorry. We've discussed the language and have consensus that it's acceptable.
Okay. Are there any such holders of stakes here today who want to say anything?
I thought I saw Steve Tubbs.
Yeah, but who want to say anything? Is anyone mayor's office? Is anybody here?
Cards?
Let's see cards. I just want to make sure that it is clear that people know we're here, and that if there's the fire department, okay, we're cool on that. Then here's the issue. Someone, and I don't know who, and it doesn't really matter, put together a job description for this position that, in my view, and in Mr. Zine's view, and Mr. Smith's view, and I think everybody who was at Public Safety on Monday thought was was the wrong way to go. I want to make sure, voting on this, that the Fire Commission is not going to reissue that job description, and instead will issue a job description that is narrowly tailored to this issue of it being an assessment and auditing position. Do you know whether folks have talked about that?
Yes, I do. We are convening a meeting of the stakeholders the first week of November. This position has been discussed extensively in that venue, and when this issue came up on Monday, it was decided that it needed to be discussed in an urgent way and as quickly as we could. So that would be the first meeting in November, and we would then address the issues raised on Monday.
Okay, well then let me just say that I hope and expect that everyone will do a good job of redrafting that. I will hold sort of a placeholder on the agenda at Public Safety Committee so that if there is any element in that job description that is ambiguous or calls out for a discussion in this regard, we're going to have it, because it would be a very bad thing, in my view, if we drafted the charter amendment properly and then somehow or other a different job description were drafted. So I don't know, Chief, if you want to address that or not, or if anyone wants to, but I just want to make it clear that I'll go forward with this based on this understanding and these representations, but I don't want to, if someone tries to spit out another job description looks like the last one we saw, there'll be consequences, and I think it'll probably tube the whole enterprise. And I want to make sure the Commission understands that.
Yeah, to be clear, the Commission is the point on this project. The Commission assigned Andrew Friedman to lead this, and so we are aware of the issues, and we'll be addressing them.
Well, I'm concerned that if the issues that the Public Safety Committee has aren't shared by the Fire Commission, it may not follow the direction of the Public Safety Committee.
Well, it's our direction on the ballot proposition, so.
Well, no, but what he's saying, Mr. Garcetti, is that our concern is not with the, well, first of all, we hadn't seen language on the ballot proposition. The mayor's office has drafted some, and from what I see, Mr. Zine, that does clearly speak to assessment and auditing only. I'll take another look at it, but that seems to be what it says. Our concern is that nonetheless, the Fire Commission had issued a job description that looked a lot more like an inspector general than the independent auditor, which is our intent, and that is what, in fact, would be called out in the charter amendment, is for an independent auditor. So what I'm hearing her say from the staff of the Fire Commission, Mr. Zine, is that I'm taking your representation to say that the Fire Commission understands this issue and is going to redraft the job description consistent with our intent that this be an auditing and assessment function only. That's what you're telling me. It should be what you're telling me, or else we're going to tube the whole enterprise. I mean, it'd be.
I don't know if they have the authority, Mr. Weiss, to put out a job description for something different than what the voters would pass.
Well, they wouldn't, but they try to once. The last one we saw gave us concern. That's what it said. I mean, that's what it said.
If you look at the Inspector General from the Police Department, it outlines audit, investigate, and oversee the police department. Basically, with what came out on the job description, audit, oversee, and conduct investigations when directed by the Fire Commission. And that conduct investigations is a concern. This is simply supposed to audit and not conduct investigations. They have an investigative branch that does the investigations. The police department has Professional Standards Bureau or Internal Affairs and the Inspector General, which can do both. We want to limit the fire, since there's a new investigative opportunity for them, to keep this only an audit. And if that's not clear, then we have a problem with it.
Mr. Stein, maybe the thing I understand your limitation, but you're the staff of the Fire Commission. You're not a fire commissioner, and they're not here, and it's not fair to put you on the spot personally on this if you don't know or don't believe you have authority. If you do know the answer, give it. If not, I'm going to ask the mayor's office to follow up on this.
I can give you a sense of what the thinking was behind the investigative authority. The theory was that in situations where an incident would involve a high-level officer, the fire chief, a deputy chief, and the issues were such that they would present a conflict of interest for professional standards. But that's not. See, all you're doing is digging a hole. So that's not going to be in the language of the charter amendment. It's just not going to be there. So it's not fair to put you on the spot because you're the staff of the commission of the commission. It's fair to put you on the spot, Mr. Gross. I talked with the deputy mayor, Mr. Ali Khan, yesterday. He seemed to understand totally why Mr. Zine and I and others on the committee wanted auditing and assessment only. I'd like to ask the mayor's office to communicate very clearly to the fire commission that is what this charter amendment's for, and we want to see a job language that is consistent with that. And that if we don't, our problem here is we can't see that language. There's not going to be time for that language to come to us before the deadline by which we must vote to put the thing on the ballot. That's the problem. So if I could have your agreement that you'll make sure the mayor's office makes that communication to the fire commission, then we can go ahead here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead then and request the city attorney, with the assistance of the CLA, prepare the documents necessary to place this measure on the March 3rd, 2009 election ballot. Instruct the city clerk to place them on the next available council agenda for consideration. And essentially the CLA report, if I will move, if there's no objection. So ordered. Okay, great.
With those reservations.
Right.
As outlined.
Items 3 and 4, if we can take those up together.
Okay. Item 3 is city clerk report and CLA report in response to motion relative to requesting city attorney to prepare and present documents necessary to place on the March 2009 ballot a city charter amendment to allow for the use of IRV vote system and any city of LA Unified School District, Community College District elections that the council deems appropriate and the feasibility of dedicating any savings for implementing IRV towards special fund to support the implementation of public financing. The item number 4 is the city clerk and CLA report in response to motion relative to requesting city attorney prepare and present documents necessary to place on the March 2009 election ballot a city charter amendment to implement an IRV system for elections in the city of LA, as well as LAUSD, including the use of IRV to fill vacancies. And that IRV would be implemented only when certified election equipment and software are available. Karen Calfian with the city clerk's office is here. And just a note, all of the items that you have before you, the council has a deadline of March 29th in order to request the city attorney to prepare the language, and then a deadline of November 7th to actually place it on the ballot. So on all of these charter amendment issues, your 2 key deadlines are October 29th and November 7th. Okay. I understand that all of these items are agendized currently for the October 24th City Council agenda this
Correct.
Friday.
Just to be clear, we picked that to give the maximum number of potential days. There's no obligation for any of the makers of those motions to take those up on Friday. Those can be continued as late as Wednesday. We wanted to err on the side of more days rather than fewer days in agendizing that. I think we'll take public comment first. Alex Pugh is our first speaker, and after that is Reynold Light.
Hi, my name is Alex Pugh with the Los Angeles
Morning.
Chamber of Commerce.
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here in support of instant runoff voting. Last spring, the Chamber's Board of Directors voted to endorse IRV.
Move the mic just a little closer for folks that are listening on,
yes.
on the phone. Thank you.
Last spring, the Chamber's Board of Directors voted to endorse IRV, and they did so for the following reasons. IRV will likely increase voter turnout by only asking the voters to visit the polls once. In the 2007 election, only 10% of Angelenos voted in the March primary, 6% in the May runoff. Consolidating the primary runoff into one election will save taxpayers up to $9 million. IRV will encourage candidates to focus on more issues in coalition building rather than fundraising, because they'll have to reach out to more constituency groups. The Chamber believes that more than 100 years of experience with IRV around the globe demonstrates this process works. We are pleased to see positive results in San Francisco, and for these reasons, we support IRV.
Thank you. If we can hold just real tight for Reynold Blight, I want to make sure that we get to Councilmember Weezer. I know we have other committees going on, so why don't you come forward, and we'd be more than pleased to take your testimony. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council Chair and Council President.
And we followed your recommendations on the other two. So
okay.
We passed them already.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to first thank you for moving forward the item on the independent assessor. It's an item that Councilmember Jack Weiss, myself, and the Public Safety Committee and the Audits Committee have been working on for over a year now, and I think we've made much progress to ensure that the reforms that our chief is implementing are overseen by the commission with the appropriate staff, and I think that would be a great step forward. So thank you for that. I'm here to speak on the instant runoff voting, and as you know, I'm supportive of moving in that direction for the city and for the other local entities in the area. I won't go into the details as to why we support it. We know we've made them over and over, and I've come to this committee twice already to express that. And I often give the example, I'll just give one example where it was very clear to me why the city should move toward direction of providing instant runoff voting, and that is a couple of elections back when we had a runoff for the community college district. I went to go vote. It was in the afternoon, and I asked one of the volunteers there how many people had voted. They told me 4 people had voted. It was already the afternoon, and they reminded me one of them, which was my wife. So to me, that reminded me of the importance that we can move forward, still have fair election, but at the same time save the city millions of dollars and perhaps the other local entities that reimburse the city for us to conduct their elections. What I wanted to talk about today just briefly is I understand that the city clerk needs to do its job to have the appropriate voting equipment in place. I would ask that I'm supportive of moving forward to the March ballot. However, should the clerk make a very good reason why we can't move forward and March 4th, I would support that, because obviously we don't want to go into something that will make matters worse. At the same time, I do understand we've been waiting for quite a while for us to get the responses we need, know what type of equipment we need to move forward. So hopefully we could move forward on March 4th if that's not possible, March 4th if that's not possible. Certainly we've got to be prepared as we move forward. So finally, I wanted to address one other item that's on your agenda. I'm going to have to leave now, but I wanted to just mention that the audits of citywide elected officials item that's on your agenda today, my committee, the Audits and Governmental Efficiency Committee, has not had a chance to review that. We believe that there might be some other options available as to what direction we need to go in before we just jump into this direction. The CLA report just came out yesterday. We have not had a time to properly review that. And certainly the Audits and Governmental Efficiency Committee, which speaks directly to these types of issues, should have an opportunity to review that report and to review this item before it moves forward to full council. I know we're under some pressing deadlines.
Committee scheduled in the next
week? We do not have any committee scheduled between now and council.
Do you know if you could do a special committee meeting this week? We can talk about it, but I think within the timeline, if it's to get there, and I know the controller was just here testifying, we'd have to our drop dead is Wednesday of next week, so.
Okay.
If we can schedule something before that, we'd be more than happy to refer.
If it could be the action of this committee to refer it to audits, I would be happy to set up a special committee meeting to do that.
What
That'd
we
be
can do
okay
is
with
we
you,
can
Mr. Zine?
Yes,
Other
that's
committee
fine.
member?
There's two, you got a quorum already.
Yeah.
And then we can continue the Friday schedule. We have a placeholder in council on Friday. We can continue that as late as Wednesday, so as long as we get it in before Wednesday, more than happy to do that.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you
very much.
All right. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, I don't need to reiterate everything he said, but first of all, gentlemen, it's good to be with all three of you, and I'm glad the full committee is here to discuss these issues today. I'd like to let the voters make a decision on instant runoff voting. I think it would be a very healthy democratic dialogue between now and March, assuming the kinks can be worked out on the computer system so that it's not an issue, as Mr. Weezer said. We believe that democracy at its best is engaging the community in a decision like this. Instant runoff voting works in some places. Others, people have questions about it. I myself even have some apprehensions about it in general. But the idea of letting people make that decision and discuss it in a thorough way, it's working up in San Francisco. I've seen it work in other places in the country. I'm a big believer that campaign reform in part could include that. The money saved, of course, could be money better spent by the city, would hopefully even take the need for money out of politics. I'm a real believer that if we could find a way to use the airwaves properly and use the media properly, people wouldn't be begging for bucks and special interests have such a play within the mix. This would free up money if we just do one election. We don't have much of a turnout usually on a runoff kind of situation. There's not much else on the ballot. I also, of course, would love to do it on all even years, but I can't seem to get that process going, so we have one big election and get everybody out. But saying all of that, I hope we can very much consider this for next Tuesday or Wednesday for final action by the council. I think I join with the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce and all kinds of groups that believe in reform. And at the very least, let the process itself go before the public. My personal opinion isn't the issue here. I personally believe in it, but I think it's enough of a democracy push that why not let the people have a robust discussion. Let's get all that stuff out there, get people talking about it, discussing it. It'll help even in the turnout, but more importantly, it lets people participate in their destiny, the future of how the democracy would work. So I urge the committee to report it out, schedule it for next week, allow the voters to participate next spring, and it's in the best interests of the democracy.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay?
Any questions, Councilmember? No? Thank you very
much.
All right. Mr. Blight? And then after that is Robin Gilbert, if you'd like to come forward as well. And I think we've got three chairs. So, Mr. Duda, would you like to come forward as well?
Good afternoon. My name is Reynold Blight. I'm the past chair of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. And I sort of feel like I'm representing a vast horde of people who have a hard time making it downtown on a
Don't call them
Wednesday
a horde.
afternoon.
They're good people.
Okay. But in any event, our neighborhood council and a number of others have supported this measure. We like the idea that it saves tax dollars. I can give you personal experience because they have voting at my house. Our precinct votes literally at my house. And I've seen the precinct workers sitting around. I've been one a couple of times all afternoon with one person an hour coming in. It's disheartening. I think this is a good way to save money and overcome that voter fatigue, which I think really sets in with these follow-up elections. I also like it because I think it really will enhance democracy. I think it'll allow people who have sort of a grassroots issue to come forward, present their issue, knowing that they're not going to get a majority, maybe not even wanting to literally be the council person or be the representative for the school district, but we'll give them a chance to present their ideas out into the public, see what kind of support that gets. It'll give other elected officials a chance to kind of see an issue and see how it plays in the public, if you will, and whether they should support it or maybe modify something and get in there and deal with it. So for all those reasons, our neighborhood council supports it. I know a number of other neighborhood councils support this as well.
Great. Did you submit a community impact statement for the official voter file on this from the neighborhood council?
No, we have not
Yeah, okay.
at this
All
point.
right.
But
Just want to know, and you know that's available for you to do?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Robin?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Robin Gilbert. I'm the president of the San Fernando Valley chapter of the Alliance for Democracy. We have endorsed instant runoff voting, and some of our members have been continuously actively working on this concept also. Just offhand, all the issues listed by the other speakers prior to me, I agree with. There are 6 people in the state of California running for president from different political parties, but so many people are afraid of voting for any one of them because of these, what they call the spoiler effect. And just having instant runoff voting for the LA City would open up our choices, because as I'm active in political causes and discussing with different people, they're afraid of voting for their first choice because of what they call the spoiler effect. So I'm urging this committee to vote to put this on the ballot to let the voters decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Mr. Souza.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, we'd like to thank the committee for taking up this motion on such short notice. You know, there's a lot to be said about IRV, and I just want to confine myself to just about 3 or 4 quick points. First, if instant runoff voting is adopted, it would not change the regular election schedule. That is, municipal elections would stay in regularly scheduled municipal elections would stay in odd years, and county, state, and federal elections would remain in even years. So that's point number 1. Second, one thing we wanted to clarify is that the city is looking into buying new voting equipment and has issued an RFP. That's a decision that the city has made independent of whether or not we get instant runoff voting. In other words, instant runoff voting isn't the cause of the drive to get new voting equipment. Rather, it's the status of Inca Vote, which has been talked about a while, that is driving that decision. Third, the city clerk, will be speaking shortly about, some issues really regarding IRV and consolidation of elections. And this raises a really important point. Regardless of IRV, the city will have to, if it gets new voting equipment on its own, will have to coordinate elections with other jurisdictions that may or may not use the same equipment. In fact, that actually brings up a possible solution here. That is, if the city teams up with the county, the county may be able to free up some $50 million in HAVA funds so that the city may be able to buy this election equipment at no cost, and in the process save over $30 million. And just finally, the city of Los Angeles has studied IRV since 2003, so it's been about 5 years. And we'd ask that at this point, that this issue, since it has shown a tremendous merit, has gotten a great diverse support across all communities, and we ask that respectfully that it be put on the ballot for this March in 2009. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Stephen Hill is our next speaker, and Liza White, if you'd like to come forward as well, and Dolores Arend.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Members of the committee, thank you for taking up this issue. I got the CLA report this morning, and so haven't had a chance to look at it thoroughly. But what I noticed is that one of the things they're recommending is a task force be established to look at this. And I understand the concern about implementation. I've helped 6 cities now implement instant runoff voting. I know the issues that are involved, the logistics are involved. It's a change for sure. But at this point, you've had 3 different reports from the city clerk's office going back several years. You've been looking at this issue now since 2003. And it seems like you could study the issue to death to the point where at a certain point it just seems like it's just going to be an endless study, one after the other. The thing that I would like to point out is that the City of London uses instant runoff voting for local elections. The City of London is 3 times the size of Los Angeles in terms of population, has 3 times the number of precincts. It didn't run any elections before it started using instant runoff voting because they didn't have local elections in the City of London. So they had to take it from 0 to 100 miles per hour rather quickly, implementing these sorts of things. I understand that there are issues involved in this, and we can certainly be glad to help out in thinking those through because we have a lot of experience with that. But the fact of the matter is that to set up a task force to study every little nuance of what you would do to implement this before the voters have even decided whether they want to pass it, I don't see how that makes sense. Why would you study something before it's actually the law in the city of Los Angeles? It seems to me that it's putting the cart before the horse and just, again, endlessly studying something that we have enough experience with implementing these things to know what the issues are and to know what needs to be done in order to do it. The other thing I would add is that the motion to implement instant runoff voting, the Rosendahl-Huizar-Reyes motion, includes a passage that says that instant runoff voting will not be implemented if the voting equipment is not ready. So all of the concern over voting equipment, which I understand, is in some ways moot, because if for some reason the concerns turn out to be so real that you can't get the voting equipment ready, or you don't get new voting equipment, the RFP, you decide not to pursue the RFP and get new voting equipment, you won't, the city council would have the option at that point of postponing implementation. That's why that clause is in there, so that you wouldn't be in any jams as a result of that. You'd have time from the time the voters have finished it to think through these issues now that you know it is in fact the law.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Liza White was our next speaker.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to read to you again, as I so often do.
Sure.
Thanks for having this committee meeting.
Thank
We're
you.
really excited about this issue, as you know.
Thank you.
Just want to say that 16 months ago, I addressed this committee on the findings of the city clerk's 2007 municipal elections after action report. And that report laid out possibilities for changes in election processes. Some of those ideas went far beyond the usual better training for poll workers and better notification if your precinct is moved. So now here we are. Now is a motion before the council regarding one of those ideas, instant runoff voting, as well as another report from the city clerk, which is dated October 17th, 2008, and it's the first time today that I had an opportunity to read it, so I read it pretty quickly. But since I have had the opportunity, it strikes me that the central issue cited by the city clerk in her response to the motion is, quote, whether there is a value in having the period between the primary and the general election. That is what she is in bold and underlined saying is the primary issue that the city council should be looking at, as opposed to all of the logistics, which is, of course, very important to look at also. Well, so this issue was raised in the presentation previously by the previous city clerk in August 2007 in the discussion of that report in front of the full council. So I haven't heard about any discussion on this particular issue and look forward to it when the council takes up these motions either Friday or whenever it's going to. Just on that issue, I'd like to say that the League supports IRV for many reasons, but an important reason is that it requires candidates to shape campaigns around one election rather than two, and that is good for the voter. Having to appeal to 50% of the electorate all in one election reshapes the dynamic of campaigns and platforms. The more candidates that run and issues that are presented to the voter, the more likely a candidate must be inclusive in her or his campaign of many issues and solutions. The vote, thank you. More to say, but thank you very much for this opportunity.
You can finish your sentence. Good.
The voter gets the full menu rather than a choice of 2 combo plates. Thank you.
Hey, see? We would have missed that line, too, so good. All right. Dolores, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm here as a concerned citizen and taxpayer. I'm not representing any group, although I am a member of the Alliance for Democracy. And I do agree with some of the points that some of the other people made. And part of the reason I'm here is because I really became angry when they had the election for the community college district recently. And the councilman previously referred to that. And there we had, finally, a runoff between 2 people, and as he said, hardly anybody turned out to vote. I believe that election cost us between $5 and $6 million. And I really feel that that's ridiculous, and something like that wouldn't come up again if we had instant runoff voting. So I'm here speaking strongly for you to consider that issue and put it before the city, because I'd certainly like to see our city, like London, have an instant runoff voting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony, and you came in today. David Holtzman is our next speaker, and then Rico Ross. Good afternoon.
Committee members, hi, thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. You've heard me speak here before. wearing my hat as the head of Los Angeles Voters for Instant Runoff Elections. I'm also on the board of the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles, and I'm also on the neighborhood council. I think you have a community impact statement from my neighborhood council before you. Good.
Remind me which one?
West Los Angeles Neighborhood Council. I would like to thank Council Members Rosendahl, Weezer, and Reyes for moving IRV forward. Thank all the committee members for being here today, especially those who've already endorsed instant runoff voting. And I just wanted to mention briefly the strange timing that's going on now. We have final deadlines for putting things on the ballot in March, for being briefed as a candidate in March. The city clerk's running these final workshops for candidates who might want to run in March. There's signs downstairs in the lobby saying this is the final filing deadline coming up next week or whenever, very, very soon, for the March election. And that's really overlapping with a very important election a lot of us are spending a lot of energy on in November. If we had instant runoff voting, we could be skipping the March election.
Is there something big coming up in a couple weeks?
You know there is.
Is that council recess?
Did you register? I hope.
Mr. Zine asked if it was council recess, but no, it's not.
Anyhow, so you've heard me speak before. Instant runoff voting is all about freedom, fairness, and savings. Those are the primary values it serves. It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. In fact, John McCain and Barack Obama both endorse instant runoff voting. So thank you again for moving this forward, and I look forward to seeing it on the ballot when it gets there.
Right. Thank you. And second last speaker is Rico Ross, and then Amanda Fowler. I'd like to come forward too.
Hello. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak. In light of what's been said already, I won't repeat very much of it. I would like to say that I know the committee has done a lot of work on this, and which has led us to the point we're at now. I, for one, I know that the RVI works. I am one that actually lived in the City of London for 13 years, so I know from experience.
During the period where they adopted the instant runoff voting?
Yes. Okay. And also, as a on the way up here, I was listening to a story about the young political major group that there was an arrest made on the gentleman that owned it for 4 counts of voter fraud, and I think this only adds to our argument that we need fewer elections, and we need those elections to be run more efficiently. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Look, thank you for just one question. Was Ken Livingston the first mayor elected under IRV in London?
Yes.
He was. Okay, gotcha. All right, and our last speaker, Amanda.
Thanks.
No.
I just graduated from Santa Clara University, and I said 3 points to make about the city clerk's report. First, the report confuses changes required for new voting equipment with changes resulting from IRV. The report says that IRV will cause many changes to election administration, especially related to consolidated elections, need for voter education, larger paper ballots, storage of equipment, and more. But this is a misunderstanding. The City of LA will need to deal with these issues if it decides to purchase new voting equipment, whether you use IRV or not. If LA purchases new voting equipment, you will need to educate voters, will move to larger paper ballots, will need to store equipment, will need to figure out the logistics of consolidated elections, etc. Second, IRV is not forcing the City of LA to purchase new voting equipment. The antiquated conditions of the Inca vote is. In fact, the motion clearly states that if the new voting equipment hasn't been purchased and made ready for IRV, the City Council can postpone implementation. And lastly, no federal or state races are held in odd election years. The report says that if IRV were adopted, the City of LA would use 2 different voting systems, one for city elections and another for county, state, and federal. But the report doesn't make it clear that only municipal races are in odd years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First time testifying,
Yes,
City
it
Council?
is.
Thank you. Congratulations. Hope to see you back. That will close our public comment on this issue. If we can ask the City Clerk to come forward. And you're going to be representing the CLA?
I will be representing.
So you can just stay in that seat.
If you'd like, I could go to the other.
It's fine. Wherever you want, Mr. CLA. We're happy. Please, anything you'd like to say at the outset, and then we'll...
Just briefly, Karen Calfine, the interim city clerk. There are recently two motions introduced on instant runoff voting. Our office has reported on a couple of occasions on the topic of IRV, and the most recent one was in February, where we addressed a number of different options, including IRV. Subsequently, the council requested information on the cost of instant runoff voting, and that was postponed until the results of the RFP were available. Just to give you an update, that RFP has been released, and we're anticipating responses in the 1st of December. So we should have a better idea of the cost of potential voting systems at that time. The RFP includes potentially the agencies who might be bidding on that to include an IRV component in that proposal. We've reported again at the request of the chair of the committee. Basically, my report outlines some of the issues that should be addressed in discussing IRV. As was pointed out, really the fundamental issue is whether you consider there to be value in having that period between the primary and the runoff election, where two candidates are remaining. Their messages may be more focused. Voters are able to get to know those candidates a little bit better. And depending on the determination on that fundamental issue, any of the other issues really are not insurmountable. Those can be dealt with. But I just want to make it clear that they're not trivial issues, and they're not necessarily simple to address, but they can be addressed. I've outlined in the report the different areas where there could be potential impacts or impacts on voters, on poll workers, the issue of consolidating with the county, because currently we do use the same voting system as the county of Los Angeles. The voters in Los Angeles are the same voters who vote in county elections as well. One of the points that was raised has to do with whether the voting system, having a different voting system or having IRV would matter. It would if we have two different voting systems. If we have the same voters, so without the same voting system, we wouldn't have a consistent experience for the same voters basically in the city and the county. I can go through these in any detail you'd like. Cost, of course, is an issue too, and then there are some issues if you do move forward, some things that should be addressed in a charter amendment. But I can either go through those or just answer your questions.
Why don't we go to questions, unless you want to hear the full report? But
no, I don't want to hear the full report. I just want to understand what's before us today is the modified limited option of this is.
There are two motions before you. One is to use. Well, both of them would put this question to the voters, whether IRV would be an option in our election system. One would be whether IRV would be used in special elections and as a test model on those types of cases. And the other would be to implement it fully in all of our elections.
But I'm kind of hearing that they don't think they're ready to do this. Yes, no, maybe.
In the CLA report, we recognize that the city departments have not been asked to fully identify the changes in language in the charter, in the administrative code, in the municipal code, and in the elections code. So to put something forward to the voters, you have to have language to present to them. That language hasn't been identified yet. And in particular, there are a lot of changes that need to be made to or considered in regard to campaign finance. And those are things that are in the charter as well as is in the various codes. The Ethics Commission should be allowed to advise on how those changes could be presented in this case. And so without that language.
So has ethics been involved in any of this?
No one has been. No departments have been asked to provide language.
I imagine that if I see Ms. Pelham here, obviously, if you were asked, you would do so. But my guess is you just haven't been asked to weigh in yet.
You want to come forward?
Well, I mean, is that sure?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Leanne Pelham with the Ethics Commission. Just to respond to your specific question,
Yeah.
We did provide the council in June with a list of the provisions that would be at issue, but the CLA is correct. We haven't provided specific language for how the system would differ under an IRV with no runoff from what it currently is. So we could certainly do that if that's the committee's interest.
So
all of that up to, I mean, that adds up to no one is recommending that the full-on question be put before the voters in March.
Not in the CLA report. Our recommendation is that if the council wants to move forward with IRV, then to direct the departments to prepare the language.
I see.
In that vein, I've been very clear on the record as a supporter of IRV. I have put that forward, and I hope what's a clear framework in terms of the thresholds for myself, just not speaking as the chair, but as one vote of many in the council of what gets me to a place of comfort. I raised, and I appreciate that you put that forward. I think the only legitimate, not the only legitimate, the main question on whether or not we would want IRV centers on that special period in between the general and the runoff, when you have a group of relatively unknown folks, a very crowded field initially where people don't focus as deeply, and what those 2 months of runoff go to find out more about Jack Weiss, about Eric Garcetti, about Dennis Zine, whoever. And I've raised that not as a way to say it tips me the other direction, but I do think it's a legitimate point that I've heard people bring up, that in city elections that are crowded in a primary, even though it's not technically a primary, but our initial election, in a runoff situation where nobody does reach a 50% threshold, it certainly gives people a lot longer to get to know those two individuals, especially if it's their first time on the scene. Secondly, though, one of the things I asked for, and I was hoping we would be ready by now, was to have that RFP done. Can you walk us through what exactly happened and put that on the record? Because I know people said, I've gone to some of my colleagues saying I had hoped to be able to get to a place where I could say, let's just do it right now, put it on the ballot and see where people are. Let people be against and for it, but let's see where the people of Los Angeles are out. But that really rested for me to a large degree on the RFP and getting some feedback of whether we're going to have equipment yet that, granted, as the point has been made, we need to replace anyway, but is that equipment going to be the right sort of equipment to be able to do this? Are we putting the cart before the horse? Can you walk us through what happened with the RFP?
Sure. It was our hope to have more information by this time as well. However, the RFP is fairly complicated. It's for a new voting and tally system. What we wanted to include in the RFP was language that also reflected the requirements that the County of Los Angeles might have if we end up partnering with them in a purchase of a new system. That's if both the city and county, as we do now, have the same system. So we needed to get some information from them. They looked at the RFP. They did provide that. We needed to give them some time to look at that, and so they were afforded that time. And so that put it out a little bit. And then other just tightening it up and making sure that we've included all the requirements that we needed to. It took a little bit more time than we had anticipated. So rather than getting it out toward the end of August, it was out in early October. And in all fairness to the people who are proposing, we needed to give them some time to prepare proposals. And
how can we do better about those estimates in the future? I don't fault that those things happen, but it's difficult for some people not to feel that there's a conspiracy going on against things when we make an estimate. And for me, I knew it was going to be tight, but when we didn't hit that deadline, can we be more realistic about the timing of those things? Can we do anything to make that more accurate in the future?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, probably would have, rather than try to do it on a real tight time frame, it probably would have just said we needed a little more time to begin with. We tried to do it in a fairly tight time frame, and I think we found that it was just a little more complicated. There was no intent to delay. I mean, I can assure you of that.
But some of the criticisms of the report said that that all these changes would be necessary under the Inca vote. Is it fair to say that there are many changes we need to address and many things about our voting system, but that IRV adds some additional ones? I mean, that eyes wide open, that I personally embrace those, but is it fair to say that there are additional things like we don't necessarily need bigger paper for, we don't necessarily need to even do paper scanning, depending on what sort of technology we get, but under where IRV is understood to be now, do you believe that there's inherently more, or is it all equal?
I think IRV would require more in terms of education, because it's very different from what people are accustomed to right now. In Los Angeles, they're not accustomed to doing any sort of a ranking on candidates. So we would have to do more in the way of educating both our our voters and our poll workers, because the poll workers also need to be familiar with how the system works. We use the same pool of poll workers as the County of Los Angeles, so that was actually one of the points, is that if we do go in a different direction, and one point that was made that is accurate, if any new voting system we get is going to require an education campaign. That's clear. I think there would probably be a little more required when you're going into something that's very different from what people are accustomed to. And if we do go in a different direction as the County of Los Angeles, and I'm not saying we are yet, I don't think we know that yet, then we need to make sure that voters understand how to use either system of voting, and that the poll workers do, and that they can inform voters as they come in and properly instruct them on how to use it as they come to vote.
Two last questions. One of the things we've been discussing a lot, obviously, is the merits of IRV, but we don't have before us the details of how we would do some of them. There's a number of ways of doing IRV. Is that correct, or is it one set way that we would do this? Is it clear?
There are several decision points that need to be made.
Okay. So, and what are, maybe, Mr. Sealy, what are some of those decisions?
The one key issue that I've seen written about, and I don't know if this is valid or not, is that in some systems, a voter must rank all of the candidates on the ballot. So if there are 10 candidates, they must rank them 1 through 10. And if they don't rank all of them, then that vote is, there's a special, it's bounced, it's tossed out. So the council needs to make a decision on that point. Must all of the candidates be ranked, or can voters just vote for the ones they want to rank and the rest are blank? So there are those kinds of technicalities that need to be addressed that have a substantial impact on the system that rolls out in the end.
And in terms of upfront costs, at least with education or anything else, I think everybody agrees there's some cost saving over time. Would you, if we already had the equipment, it would potentially?
If we have the equipment, I mean, there's not going to be an immediate savings right off the bat, because you have, and again, this is going to depend on whether we go our own way and purchase a separate system from the County of Los Angeles. If we purchase the same system as the County of Los Angeles, and ours just has an IRV component, then there's going to be some savings there. The things that would impact the initial savings would be the cost of the education campaign, and granted that probably would be higher in the earlier years and perhaps taper off later. So
it's your best professional estimate that for this year, in a very difficult budget year, which we have to be honest about, there's more upfront costs, even though over time we could get some savings on this?
That's probably true.
Okay. Mr. Zahn?
There were 6 cities. What are the cities that use this?
Well, San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley have included language in their charters to use it.
No, what cities are using it?
Currently
using it?
Let's see, Cary, North Carolina, Henderson. I want to make sure I get the right one. San Francisco.
Henderson, Nevada?
No, North Carolina, I believe.
No, I thought you said Henderson.
That's right, Burlington.
San Francisco.
Are any of those? Sorry, Mr. Zine, if I just piggyback that question. Are any of those jurisdictions as diverse as Los Angeles?
Probably San Francisco comes the closest, but you could argue that Los Angeles is more diverse just by virtue of the fact that we provide election material in 7 languages.
How many of these other cities?
San Francisco does 3.
3 languages?
Including English.
And we would do 7.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
The other point is San Francisco is a city county,
right?
So they have a very different type of governmental structure than the city of Los Angeles. Because we are in the county of Los Angeles, we do consolidate elections with the county. Other cities, for example, Southgate or Bell, they might consolidate their elections onto ours when we're holding a city election because of the LA Unified School District elections. Yeah. So there's a lot of crossover between the various cities in the county with the city of Los Angeles and with the county of Los Angeles.
And actually it goes the other way. It's we would consolidate the LA Unified School District and the Community College District elections onto the other cities' ballots, so that then they would include those races on their ballots for those areas. And so
have we checked to make sure the machines work?
We don't have the machines yet.
No, I know we don't, but these other cities do. The cities that have instant.
San Francisco has a system that's operating currently.
Is it working satisfactorily, unlike Florida?
Have
there been positive?
My understanding is that their new system is working, right? Right.
Okay.
But it is not certified.
That's my next question. The question came up previous meetings about certification. If it's not certified, how can they use it?
They have a conditional certification. It's approved for the November election. It doesn't. My understanding is it does not have a federal certification, but it does. It is certified or approved to be used in the November election.
When do they plan to certify it?
Well, I think they're in the process of trying to get a full. I think they're already in the process in the federal, and then they'll work through the state as well.
Do any of these other cities have a certified system around the country that have been mentioned?
We would have to do the research on that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And the other questions I have.
Let me make one point. There only is one system in California that's approved for use in California.
But it's not certified.
Right, it's the same system.
Okay, and when it comes to the counting, does the county do the counting or the city do the counting?
When we consolidate onto a county ballot, the county does the counting,
All right,
which is why if we have an instant runoff race that we've consolidated onto the county, we would not be able to do that because right now they don't have the capability of.
So what would happen to the count?
Well, what we would have to do is we wouldn't be able to consolidate a race onto a county ballot if we had a different system. We would either have to run a concurrent election, which would advise against, or we would do it on a separate day.
So now it's more voter fatigue if they're doing it on a separate day. I mean, how do we make it simple if we're going to make it simple and effective? Because I'm not hearing simple and effective. I'm hearing more complicated. Then the other question regarding the proven aspect of it is the unified school district community colleges. Have we discussed with them to see if they're interested since their elections are?
We've gotten some letters from the community college district in support of this, though I believe still the board has not adopted an official resolution for it, but I've talked to them privately. They've come here, we've had testimony, and we had a letter from the community college district. The school board has not.
Has not supported it?
It has not either way. They haven't. I
So-
don't have
Yeah, and
correspondence or-
incidentally, if a charter amendment were to go forward, it would have to be approved by both the city and the LAUSD
So how do we do
voters.
this in a time frame when we're talking about?
The community college,
I see.
yeah, because they're
The voters, right?
So how do we get this done in a time frame with the approvals, the RFP, and these other components with a March election? And this is mid-October. How does
Well-
this happen, or does it not happen?
Well, if you want all of that information, we won't have it before you need to make a decision on whether to put this on the ballot. The option is not to have it and to move forward,
Wait,
or to
option
go
not to
with,
have what?
not to have all the information about the cost and so on.
And move forward without that?
That's-
Isn't that a disservice to the
Well, I'm saying
transparent
that's
government?
an option. I'm not
But isn't that a
suggesting one or
disservice?
the other. I'm just saying it's
When
an
we're
option.
talking transparency in government, to hold something back that we don't have answers to? See, I don't have any problem with the process if it works. But if we don't know if it works and all the components are there, then I think we need to analyze it and then make a decision at an appropriate time instead of giving half the pie and then figure out the rest of it later. Is there a rush to get it done? Or can we wait and do it properly with the thorough research that needs to be done, which obviously isn't complete yet? Not to criticize your
No, I'm saying you
clerk's
certainly can
office.
you can certainly do that.
So I think that what I'm hearing, the advocates want it done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing is that we're not ready to move forward. So I would say we need to gather our facts before we move forward, based upon the reports from the CLA and from the clerk. And when at that appropriate time comes, then we move forward. But I think we're going with a half-cooked opportunity for whatever political purposes that does a disservice to the general public. And the confusion that it may cause when you're talking about the local election, the national election, we can only use it in certain elections. If the school board hasn't signed on to it and they need to sign on to it, they haven't taken a position. I think it's foolish for us to move at this stage until we get all our ducks in order. I don't think they're in order yet.
Okay,
So I would
well, it would be my
recommend that we continue
recommendation.
it.
Well, it would be my recommendation. Mr. Weezer and Mr. Rosendahl have asked for us to take this before full council. My recommendation, I think you may have that same reflection there too, just to forward it with no recommendation right now. So we don't take
See, I don't think
position.
we have the facts
And then
to
we
do
can
it.
have it in council. I believe Mr. Rosendahl was looking to schedule it, to continue it scheduled for Friday, but to continue it to Wednesday.
So we can
next
continue,
week.
move it with no recommendation?
Yeah, we'd move it with no recommendation.
Mr. Weiss?
I'm fine with that. I think it's an unusual legislative strategy that is probably not, going to help it move along, but if that's what the proponents
But see,
want, then,
well-
they know that's what they want. I mean,
it would
it's not going to help it. But
Just for the record, it would be my preference to keep it here, but I do think,
Well,
out of courtesy to our colleagues, we
But
should.
then it goes to full council, and then we spend an hour or two debating it and accomplish nothing except more discussion, and it comes back to this committee until we get the facts and figures that it's going to have to come to this committee anyway, when you get all your facts together and the recommendations come. So it's going to go bounce to the council so we can have 1 to 2 hour discussion, accomplish nothing, and then come back to this committee. But if that's your wish, Mr. Chair,
You'll support me?
I'll
Thank
support you.
All right. Well, it is forwarded with.
They say government is sometimes.
We'll support you in doing nothing.
All right, thank you.
Sometimes government is inefficient.
That's
This
right.
is an example.
Let's send it forward with no recommendation then. Thank you very much. Appreciate the testimony. Thank you, everybody, for being here as well. We will take up item number 7 now.
Item 7 is CLA and Department of Water and Power reports in response to motion relative to directing DWP to report on the elements of the Los Angeles Basin Solar Power, Green Energy, and Jobs Development Mandate for Los Angeles Initiative, and take steps necessary to place the measure before the voters on the March 2009 ballot and begin work on the implementation of an LA Basin Solar Power, Green Energy, and Jobs Development Plan for the City of LA to produce 400 megawatts of the city's power demand from in-basin solar energy by 2013.
Nobody's listening to you.
I know.
I'm listening to you.
Good afternoon.
Learning to read faster.
I think what we will do is we will have public hearing, but since we have a lot of different cards on this, I'm going to wait on the public hearing. We'll keep committee here till 5 o'clock, so we have about 40 minutes. I know Mr. Zine, in his service as a reserve officer, will have to leave shortly in about 10 minutes. So we may decide to take some action and to hear public testimony following. It wouldn't count as an official public hearing. We will have to have that in the full council if that's the case.
It would. If there are two of us here, it counts as public hearing. I guess
not if we've taken the action, but
not if we've taken.
But we could take the action.
Well, it doesn't.
Design too, if you stay. So.
As long as you and I are here for
correct
the hearing, then we will do the public hearing. What I would say is you have a stack of cards there, and what I would say to the proponents is that I also need to get moving, and I want to vote yes on this. So if you want to filibuster, you better be an opponent.
And I'll show my support, but I won't be able to hear all of it.
All right. Well, there's
solar.
There's some public testimony on positions there, which people can do math on very well. We have a number of cards. A lot of them are general public comments. A handful of them are 4. So we will try to get again to as many of those as possible. But let's hear first from our CLA department, and we will take it from there. Mr. CLA?
For the record, Jerry Miller, Chief Legislative Analyst. I'll be very brief in the presentation. Submitted to you was a proposal to put a measure on the March ballot that would require, would mandate the development of in-basin solar that would become property of and part of the DWP portfolio of power. There are a variety of elements of the proposal in our report that if you choose to put it on the ballot, we recommend that the language would include. And very quickly, the department would be required to develop a plan and submit it to the council with sufficient timeframes for the council to evaluate that plan and make the necessary decisions. The plan would have to include the financing provisions to show exactly how it would be financed. There would be provisions for the council to, with mayoral concurrence by ordinance, to suspend the program under a variety of conditions. We've added some of the conditions from the initial proposal, and the proposers have agreed on those conditions. Also, we're recommending that the program be reviewed in 2013. The proposal that was submitted had an automatic renewal at that time. So what we're recommending the language include is that it be reviewed and potentially terminated or extended or modified based on a variety of findings on whether the program is working and whether it's feasible. There is one issue that I do need to bring your attention relative to the ordinance. The proponents have asked for a supermajority requirement of 10 to suspend or terminate or modify the program, and 12 votes to override a mayoral veto. I'm simply pointing that out because the standard provisions would be, 8 votes with 10 votes to override. There are supermajorities with overruling proprietary department. It's not without precedent, but they're generally with proprietary department boards and planning commission decisions when the council overturns those.
Who's making that request?
The people that submitted the request initially that this be put on the ballot.
Who are those people?
Well, the representatives are here. It would be Mr. Darcy and others from the coalition.
Okay. Mr. Nahai.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon, committee members, and thank you so much for the opportunity to appear before you this afternoon. My name is David Nahai. I'm privileged to serve as the General Manager of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Sitting to the right of me is Mr. Joe Avila, who's a Special Assistant to the General Manager, and right behind me is Mr. Jeff Peltola, who's the Budget Director. And we're here today in response, of course, to the Council motion introduced last Wednesday, October 15th, to discuss the Green Energy and Good Jobs Solar Initiative, which would require the development of 400 megawatts of solar power systems located within the Los Angeles basin by the year 2013. Let me take a moment to thank the mayor for his leadership on this. Of course, you, Mr. President, for your support, and the City Council for its leadership generally on renewable energy issues in this, and a special thanks to working Californians, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Kropke, the chairs of that group, which took the initial sponsorship steps with respect to this initiative. I think we all recognize that the City of Los Angeles has done not nearly enough in connection with the development of solar power. This is a natural gift given to the city, and yet, as we sit here, we have produced only about 13 megawatts. We have under reservation 18 megawatts, but there is so much more that can be done. Having said that, we've also been recently recognized as being the leading municipal utility in the nation as far as the production of solar power is concerned. But it's not, as I said, anywhere near enough. Going to 400 megawatts is going to put us in a leadership position throughout the entire world. Additionally, it's going to reduce our reliance on carbon-based fossil fuel electricity. It will generate good green and blue-collar jobs in Los Angeles. It'll alleviate stress on our system. It will help us deal with the peaking patterns that we're seeing, and it will help us comply with the requirements of AB 32, 1368, these mandates that we're subject to and which we cannot flout in terms of our obligations. As you know, we have a mandate of going to 20% by 2010 and 35% by 2020. The other thing to remember about solar power in basin is that we will not need to build the transmission to bring this power home. It'll be right here. It'll be in Los Angeles. The 400 megawatts of clean power is going to reduce our carbon emissions by more than 400,000 metric tons. It'll promote new technology innovations with a focus on increased efficiency, reliability, and reduced costs. It will employ innovative financing and other program tools to increase the use of solar. It will mitigate the city's vulnerability to natural gas price volatility, and it will foster increased green technology economic activity in the city at a time when an economic impetus is so badly needed. This will power literally tens of thousands of households annually. Once the initiative is approved by the City Council, LADWP will develop a comprehensive program which will cover the installation of solar systems throughout the city on commercial properties and DWP and city-owned properties. It will include a staffing program, the costing, load forecasting, the modeling, and the creation of a standardized set of protocols designed to support the program. let me talk for a second about the cost of the program. Solar, as we all know, is expensive. However, in this case for the city, this will constitute a very worthwhile investment. The cost, as we estimated at the present time, will be somewhere between about $1.5 billion and $3 billion. People will say that that is a wide range. And the reason...
That's a wide range.
It's a wide range. But we have to recognize that we're dealing with a technology that is very fluid at the moment. And there are many new ideas and new innovations that are coming on the market. By fostering a program of this size, we will contribute to additional innovations, to basically supporting human ingenuity, and as a result, the costs over time will come down, and we'll be able to have the benefit of the efficiencies that are going to follow. And LADWP will work aggressively to identify all cost-saving measures in order to make sure that we protect the city and, of course, our own treasury at the department as we go forward with this program, including discussing with other utilities the kinds of experiences that they're having. I should also say that while this program is an LADWP program, it is a precursor to a larger solar vision for the city, one in which various other regimes such as feed-in tariffs and co-ops and other mechanisms that have been used elsewhere will be introduced in the city. However, it is, I think, a great, historic, and very bold declaration on the part of the city as far as solar power is concerned. Again, catapulting the city, I believe, into a leadership position on the world stage. And so we've submitted a report analyzing the initiative, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is take just a few quick opening comments. If there's any from committee, we'll move to the, and Ms. Gruhl, and then move to the cards that we have here. I'm going to do a minute per speaker, which I realize is short. I would encourage folks who probably have some more testimony in council, a couple bites more in council, both when this goes forward for the instruction and then when we have a final ordinance that comes back for placing initiative on the ballot. And that'll give us about 15 minutes for some further questions as well. Let me just say that this is, first and foremost, an idea. Time has come. I appreciate the comments that you made. Really, in three areas, this is a good idea. One, for reliability, which we've had a lot of discussions, not in this committee, but Ms. Gruhl and I serve on Energy and Environment. It was because Ms. Gruhl and Ms. Perry and I were all very enthusiastic about moving this forward, and three of us are on that committee that we moved it to this committee so we could all, the three of us could put forward the motion. But in terms of reliability, solar power makes sense at those peak hours when we're facing unreliable power. It also is an infrastructure issue, which we know and we've discussed, but this is a big part of it. Second, from a health perspective, this is critical, whether it's global warming, whether it's air quality here, or whether it's the commitment that this council and this mayor has made to continuing to get off of kind of our coal and carbon addiction to move towards cleaner fuels. And third, jobs. We've done a lot of, I think Los Angeles has been at the forefront of talking about planning for, and in some cases implementing some green jobs. But this would really take us up to a level we haven't seen, a good paying middle-class jobs. And we've always been fans of owning and operating our own power, and not, we'd much rather have it right here in the basin where people who grow up here can have those installation jobs, where we can foster companies that are based here rather than buying, a wind contract in Montana or wherever we have to go these days, which are necessary places probably to get some of our 20% by 2010, but as little as possible that we don't have to own is the best. that we don't own is best. And also, I appreciate your comments that this is part of a wider regime, that developers, private solar developers, could continue to lease space, could continue to construct solar power and sell that back to DWP. That you didn't say it, but you can just nod your head yes if it's correct that a residential program would continue with DWP, because there's a real role, I think, and an exciting thing for a lot of LA residents who want to be a part of a green future in their own homes and throughout. And also that we would continue to look at the emerging technology. And we'll get to this in a second, but I have some questions on kind of square footage, availability, some rental issues, and some costs to the ratepayer, which I think we have some good answers to, but I'll get to that afterwards. I'd like to make some opening comments, Ms. Gruhl and Mr.
Weiss,
Comments bad, voting
I think
good.
I think he likes it. He stated that. Ms. Gruhl,
I
go
will
ahead.
echo with Mr. Garcetti and was pleased to join with both of the, also with Ms. Perry and others. And I know if we could have had 8 people on there, Mr. Weiss would have been on there too, supporting it. I think the points you've made are very strong. And we've talked about the fact that here we are, purchasing renewable energy, and we've had a big discussion about the importance of increasing that by 2010 and 2025, and the numbers we need to go up. And that's great that we're purchasing it, but the creation of that renewable energy here in Los Angeles, the ability to have it and not depend on others, to have assets here locally, so that as we have in other instances where other utility-owned or private have had trouble being able to provide the electricity, we've been able to do that in Los Angeles in times of crisis because we've had our own assets, and that you have a portfolio that includes all of that. As Mr. Garcetti mentioned too, the importance of jobs, the importance of the environment, the importance of also the balance between utility-owned and created, and still having a private sector role out there. And I think that's important in keeping the existing program that we have, both for residential and others, the balance there. I think the best thing would be is if the private sector and the city and DWP are creating as much solar power as we can. And I think that is a good part of it. But I do believe as we look forward and we look at the pricing, which you may talk about, the fact that when we go out to buy it, I mean, we have a price today. My concern in the future, and this is why I support our own assets, is the demand is only going to get greater. And in some instances, the marketplace will respond and create more renewable energy out there. But for a period of time, we're going to be competing with other places that are having to also respond to renewable energy. And so if we control it, it's one of the things that, so we sometimes give DWP a hard time, but over the years, DWP has controlled a number of assets smartly, or, you could argue in history, but historically, they haven't depended on someone else. They've had their own assets here. And when they had to depend on others, it's caused us a lot of problems. And so I think that this is an ambitious goal, but one in which I think we can meet, and to address all the concerns that people may have raised in making sure that we still have the existing program that is out there, but more importantly, creating good jobs here. And when you talk about an economic stimulus in the country, the most important thing that people are talking about is creating jobs and creating infrastructure, and that does it. And so that's.
Thank you very much.
Try to be
Ms.
quick
Gruhl.
for Mr. Weiss, because I know
He's sensitive.
You're on the council. You just listen to people talk and talk.
All right. With that, we will go to public comment. I'm sure we'll ask you to come back. And our first speaker is Jeff McConnell, and Ron Gastelum is our second, and David Valenzuela. If the three of you would like to come forward. Good afternoon.
Thanks for the time. My name is Jeff McConnell. My firm, Arnie Berghoff & Associates, represents Recurrent Energy, a private solar developer that was recently awarded a 5-megawatt solar project in San Francisco on one of their reservoirs, the largest municipal PV project in the U.S. and a showcase example of the benefits of a municipal utility partnering with private industry to garner the most advantageous economic model. This initiative that you presented is ambitious, and we congratulate the city for bringing it forward, and LADWP for its current work in the solar industry. But as proposed, the initiative seems to limit inclusion from all parties who could benefit and is vague on details. If the private developers are really included, give the department a goal for power purchase agreements from the private sector. The private sector is willing to take on the risk to develop, fund, and operate these solar installations and sell the power to the department to the department at a competitive rate, approximately half of the electrical rate that DWP has targeted in its report. One of the reasons private developers can produce the power at a lower rate is they can take advantage of the recently extended federal tax credit incentive that can be worth 30% of the capital costs of the installation. I encourage you to pass an ordinance, not wait 4 months to risk this ambitious program on a ballot initiative when you can start this immediately and get LADWP producing this power now.
Thank you. All right, Ron Gastelum is our next speaker.
I'm Ron Gastelum. I'm here representing the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Vice Chair of Public Policy and Chair of our Energy, Water, Power. I think that I will just say a few things about the comments I've heard today. Clearly, we're in favor of going forward with an ambitious program. Clearly, we all understand how complex this is, evolving technologies, et cetera, but it is certainly something we need to do. It will come as no surprise to you that the LA Chamber of Commerce wants private sector involvement. We are hearing that that is going to be encouraged. We need more detail on how that will be done. When you look at the proposal, 400 megawatts of power that shall be installed, owned, operated, and maintained by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. That's much of the capacity that is out there, but we also know that much of that capacity is on privately owned property. So as soon as possible, we need the private sector at the table, helping to fashion a proposal that will work. A feed-in tariff, we think, is a good answer.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron. Appreciate it. David Valenzuela.
Yeah, thank you, committee. David Valenzuela, Labor's International Union of North America, representing solar installers for the laborers. Committee, we have been working for about a year establishing solar workforce for the community, in which we have at this time about 40 installers, and another 40 installers coming on board, all live in the LA community. The laborers have been working with outreach programs like the East LA Skills Center, Homeboy Industries, and their solar program, and the laborers have been reaching out to existing contractors, union and non-union contractors, on the scope of work of solar installation. Our main concern is not to exclude the laborers, solar installers, or any qualified craft contractors being able to do this work. We want to put the local trained workforce to work back in the community, and this will not allow us to do that. Please reconsider and apply it fairly to all craft trades so we're able to do the work. What's going to happen when the other trades are in front of the project and left out, and why they weren't included?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Jorge Rodriguez, Janet Gagnon and Bill Corcoran are our next speakers. Who did I call first? Janet?
I'm the second one.
Okay.
Jorge Rodriguez, representing Laborers Local 300. We have a variety of concerns, and we want some clarifications on this initiative. One is the inside and outside work that's going to be done in the plants and outside of the plants, the inside wiring, the solar panels, that includes all the basic trades, maintenance of the work, also what would happen in terms of subcontracting. We need clarification on that, on what's going to be appropriate in terms of the bargaining unit work that's going to be taking place. And I want to make it real clear, we are definitely in support of green-collar jobs, and we're very clear on that issue. And also the training and creation of jobs, the concern of the Department of Water and Power working directly or indirectly with other city departments, developing training programs to ensure low and modest income residents, and what does that actually mean? And there's other trades that have training programs and training academies, and we were able to train the capable workforce.
Okay. I can try to be as even with time as I can.
Yeah. And what does that mean? I'm sorry. What does that mean? With the issue of other trades, the hiring workers, the operating engineers, the lifting of the panels, the rebar enforcement, et cetera.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate those points you made. Appreciate it. Please. Bye.
Jenna Gagnon, Solar World. Solar World is the largest U.S.-based manufacturer of photovoltaic solar panels, so obviously we are very supportive of this concept. We've been manufacturing in Southern California for more than 30 years, and we believe that solar provides the best answer for distributed renewable energy for the city of Los Angeles and for job creation for all of the installers, as was mentioned earlier. One caveat for us is, and Councilwoman Gruhl was gracious to mention it, is that we want to make sure that the existing programs for residents and homeowners and businesses continues to be supported, because we strongly believe that true energy independence will only be achieved when every single person steps up and becomes responsible for their own power generation as well as use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bill, I know it's a minute, but welcome.
Thank you. Bill Corcoran, Senior Regional Representative of the Sierra Club. I'm speaking on behalf of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Technologies Global Green Coalition for Clean Air in the Club. And clearly we share enthusiasm about doing this. This kind of investment in our workforce benefits our quality of life throughout the city. We support such an initiative, ensuring to voters and ratepayers that there are on-ramps and off-ramps to enable reasonable startup and sensible adjustments to the program, audits and accountability, including a representative oversight committee that includes environmental stakeholders, technological flexibility to meet these ambitious but achievable goals, and that all measures are taken by the city to investigate that the revenue bonds, you can sell them in the capital market we're in. So we want, and boy, 60 seconds is fast. I'll go on to say that we are encouraged by the report from DWP. We think that it points toward having the tools to achieve this program. And I'll add one thing, which is that we do ask the city to set a date certain for the release of the comprehensive solar plan from the city. It's important that we understand how this plan integrates with that, and to learn as soon as we can how the city will move forward on its comprehensive solar plan. And I'll leave you copies of the
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's not top secret, we'd love to see the entire testimony that you had there, so we will be able to read it for sure. Tracy Chavarria is next from Central City Association, John Ayers from Open Mar Vista Go Solar, and James Brennan. The same.
Good afternoon, Tracy Shavira, Central City Association. CCA has not taken a formal position on this matter, but we do have some concerns that we hope you'll take into consideration as you move forward. While CCA supports the city's efforts to diversify DWP's energy portfolio and expand the use of solar energy in particular, we believe that the proposed initiative lacks cost-competitive private sector alternatives. Solar energy is an important power source, but we are unclear as to whether this proposal is the best way to develop it. In listening to DWP's presentation, I understand that this proposal is a precursor to a bigger solar plan that includes private sector involvement. We would simply like the opportunity to work with the city to draft a more flexible and workable proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With 12 seconds to spare, look at that. John.
John Ayers. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
I love this because I'm representing myself. I'm not representing a solar company. I'm not representing DWP or anything. I'm a homeowner. I am representing Open Mar Vista. James and I are homeowners. We're friends. We live in Mar Vista, Councilman Rosenthal's district. I don't think someone should have a master's degree in photovoltaic technology to get solar panels. Unfortunately, if you go to the DWP website, it's quite confusing, and I encourage you to do so. Currently, the upfront cost for solar panels and installation makes it pretty much cost prohibitive. Generally maybe $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 depending on the size. Rebates make it more appealing, maybe cutting it in half. So if a $30,000 unit might be $15,000. My understanding, and I'm certain Mr. Nahai or others will be able to tell me, out of the DWP customers, you have 1.2 million residential homeowners. So it's a large number of potential solar units, solar panels. I seriously think those should be considered. Currently, my understanding is that we're giving 1% of our being taxed 1% off of our utility bill going into a fund for renewable energy. I think that should be utilized. I guess I'll finish up since we're quick. James and I have collected several hundred signatures of people who want solar energy now. DWP has over 1 point some million customers. They've only got several hundred. So we're all in favor of getting more solar. There's just a residential and a
Absolutely.
private sector that Ms. Gruhl mentioned
Yeah.
that I think needs to be addressed.
And a couple of us on the council have been through the residential programs ourselves and been to that website, and we know that, and we will definitely, we've actually had in our Energy and Environment Committee considerable discussions, and the department has assured us a new plan on the residential side, which isn't before us today, but we'll make sure that we get you that information
Great.
too. Okay. James.
Thank you for having us today for this important conversation. As John mentioned, I am a Mar Vista resident and am helping to organize Go Solar Mar Vista. We're working with our neighborhood council, and just last week, inspired by Al Gore's Alliance for Climate Protection and the subsidies enabled by the Million Solar Roofs portion of the California Solar Initiative, announced a challenge in Mar Vista to convert to 100% clean electricity in 10 years. We understand that the DWP's goal is less aggressive, 35% in 12 years. So our understanding is that the DWP would be a portion of the solution. We've contacted many vendors that we've found to be leaders in community solar throughout the state and the country. Many of them won't talk to us because we're in the DWP service territory. We've done a lot of research to find out whether or not we can actually buy solar power from a third party with solar unit installed on our roof. We believe that all forms of the sale of electricity are not prohibited in Los Angeles, only those which use the DWP's power infrastructure. So we support solar power and green energy and jobs development in Basin for Los Angeles. We do think it needs to address community solar and green jobs for the workers in our own local communities.
Thanks for the initiative you guys are taking. It's impressive. It's great. Stewart Waldman is our next speaker, Marvin Kropke, and Myung-Soo Suk. Hey there. How you doing?
Stewart Waldman, President of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. We've not taken a position on this matter yet, but we do have concerns. And the concerns are that private business would be shut out, the installers, that the size requirements for business would shut out most businesses in this city, and that the photovoltaic seems to be the preferred means, and we'd like to look at other alternatives as well.
Thank you. You win the award. You gave us 29 seconds. Marvin, that's right.
Good afternoon,
Used to
council
it.
members. My name is Marvin Kropke, and I'm privileged to be the business manager of IBEW Local 11 in Los Angeles, representing 8,000 electrical workers in this city, in this great county. I, of course, rise in support of this proposal to press this on to the full council and, of course, put it before the voters. I want to respond to a couple of comments. One, this is a voluntary program. Two, the jurisdiction of IBEW 18, when certain people have come up here and said they want to talk about their installers, they've collectively bargained this jurisdiction of work for over 100 years with the Department of Water and Power. So there isn't a question about whose jurisdiction of work. But this is a great proposal. It will reduce load in centers where we are overloaded in this city, preempt blackouts, bring green power, bring decent jobs that pay benefits such as health and pension. It's a win for everyone. I know we may have differences with the chamber at times in their wish to privatize, but keeping the power local and locally owned should be our goal. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your work on this.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Myung-Soo Suk. I'm the Development Director for the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. I'm here on behalf of our Secretary-Treasurer, Maria Elena Durazo, who unfortunately, due to scheduling conflict, couldn't be here. Just wanted to mention that, on behalf of 800,000 union members that we represent, that we can't afford to wait any longer to develop cleaner, renewable energy sources. The Green Energy and Good Jobs for Los Angeles Act initiative is an important step toward ensuring that the future generation will not have to depend on expensive and highly polluting forms of energy. And in addition, this initiative will create hundreds of good middle-class jobs with good benefits in manufacturing, installing and maintaining solar energy facilities, jobs that might otherwise go elsewhere. The initiative establishes a job training and outreach academy and will create jobs in underserved neighborhoods throughout the city. We believe that this is a great initiative that we can fully support as a labor movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Sue Cataly is next, Jackie Cornejo, and Sarah Birmingham. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Sue Cately. I'm Executive Director of the California Solar Energy Industries Association. As some of you know, CalSIA is the largest solar industry association in California. It was founded in 1977. We have over 30 years of experience. One of the reasons why we're against Proposition 7, which you might have heard about, is that it was poorly drafted. And we think that it was inadvertent, and we believe that it was done because they didn't involve the solar industry and the expertise that we had that we could offer it. In fact, we wish that it could be different, that we could be in support of it. Today I'm here because I think we can support this initiative, and it's really is a relief to be able to support a solar initiative when you're from the solar industry. Feels a lot better. We have some expertise that we want to just mention today briefly because I know we're on a time limit. Just for cost issues, since we get beaten up about the cost of solar energy constantly. So let me give you a picture in your mind. The California Solar Initiative, the SB1 initiative that's administered by the investor-owned utilities, is a $3 billion project to produce 3 gigawatts. Your proposal is a 400 megawatt project estimated to cost between $1.5 to $3 billion. So in sense of scale, we would very much like to work with you to try to find ways to make this a better cost option for your ratepayers and for your citizens. We think that specifically for the bond initiative, if the language can be written broadly enough so that you can take advantage of cost-saving opportunities later on that you may learn about, that would be to your benefit. So, and that's very analogous to Prop 7, where they're locking the language in and we can't help them to make it better. So that's what we're suggesting to you.
We want you to be at the table with us. So
I thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate that. And that closes my testimony. I'll just hand some paper over.
Does it have suggested language in there? Is that?
I have some suggested language based on the information that's been made available
But
publicly,
you need to
and I
look at
know
the
there's
stuff,
more behind this. So
great.
Very much like to work with you.
Okay, Jackie.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Jackie Cornejo with the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. We're here in support of the initiative. This initiative will help create good middle-class jobs here in Los Angeles, especially because it establishes a jobs and training academy, which will ensure that it will create jobs in underserved communities here in Los Angeles. At Lane, we've been working extensively for the past 2 years on a construction careers campaign to ensure that construction jobs in Los Angeles go to working class residents, especially that there are local hiring provisions in these initiatives. So, this work also complements our concern for Los Angeles having healthy communities. Pollution from burning coal for electricity has contributed to air pollution and smog in the city. So we are in support of green energy, and we hope that we can move forward with this initiative today. And Los Angeles continues to be at the forefront of green energy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Birmingham with the Solar Alliance, and I will be brief because I know I don't have very much time.
I think I have more than that.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
I just want to start off by saying that I wholeheartedly agree with you that solar does make sense and provides reliability, particularly when it's in-basin generation and we don't need transmission lines to bring it in. I applaud the aggressive goals of the bond initiative, and I really look forward to seeing it as part of LADWP's comprehensive solar plan. I do want to state that I completely agree with the councilwoman that this needs to be additive to the existing program that residents and businesses can receive incentives so they can install solar on their own homes and businesses and reduce their own energy usage and bill. I also would just like to state that when you're looking at the bond, I would encourage you to look at different ownership structures so that you can take advantage of private investment that can take advantage of the federal investment tax credit and install systems at a cheaper rate than you would be if you're not able to take advantage of the ITC.
Okay.
So with that, thank you.
Great. We have one last card. William, a.k.a. Bill Luddy.
Thanks, Councilman. I'll start before I sit down.
Sure, right,
Short on
exactly.
time. And since we're on the AKAs, I guess I better keep it straight. We think that the initiative for solar energy is clearly something that will benefit the city. However, we very much would urge that you reconsider some of the details in this, particularly the restriction of this to DWP employee in terms of installation. The question of the fiscal responsibility of putting on the ratepayers the cost of develop a training academy and program when, for example, our union, the Regional Council of Carpenters Southwest, spends over $25 million a year on our training programs. And in fact, I believe has one of the only training facilities in the city of Los Angeles. I know other unions have training facilities. There are numbers of contractors who are available to do this work, who can move forward, provide the types of training, apprenticeship opportunities that we want to see developed along with this type of solar energy program. As to the historic 100-year jurisdiction, I don't recall anybody installing any rooftops photovoltaic cells in the historic photos I've looked at, but perhaps it happened. So I would question whether that issue is settled, and a lot of people are confident to do that work. And I think it is in the city's advantage not to build up a permanent workforce when in fact you have advantage of a lot of trained, qualified people out there and contractors who can bid this work, give you a competitive price, come in and do it, and get the best for the city as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will close our public comment. Just as a side note, before we did have photovoltaic power, the downtown of the city was, instead of going to the cardinal points of north, south, east, west, we're offset to the northwest and southeast because of the sun. It was a better way to build our city, but then we went back to the north, south, east, west after the Pueblo. If we can ask the general manager to come back up.
I'm going to call you Tom Levant.
There you go, exactly. What high school did you go to? We have a report before us. I think there is an intention to move this forward, but there's been excellent input. And I think all of us want to do something that is fast. There's a sense of urgency about global warming. There's a sense of urgency about green power in this city. And we also want to do it right. So we really appreciate the comments that have been here. And this is going to be a work in progress with as many people we invite to the table as a part of that while we move this forward. One of the things that was in your report looked at square footage. I mean, the items I'd like to focus in on are the square footage, the availability, rental, and the cost of the ratepayer, just putting that on the record, because I know that when we're looking at cost to ratepayer, we shouldn't be comparing apples to oranges. It's not solar versus a coal burning plant someplace, but we should be looking at other forms of alternative energy, whether they be wind and other things that are also, all of these cost a little bit more, at least right now where technology is at. But solar, I think, is extremely competitive when you look at that. But we want to get into that in a second. In terms of square footage, in your report on page 6, when you look at the real estate that is needed here, you looked at all of you gave kind of an estimate here of 25% of the entire basin being usable flat roof space, which means that that would be about 700 megawatts. To get to 400 megawatts means that more than half of all the roof space in Los Angeles would need to have solar panels on them. Is that roughly correct?
Councilman, you've done that math. I haven't quite.
Okay.
So.
Well, it's just something to note. The only reason I note that is because we know there's structural issues. We've got people from the trades here who know this better than 3 council members do. But we know that there are certain rooftops that will be able to support these structures. Other ones will have structural issues. We've got most of these, almost all of these are privately owned, and we have issues in terms of how we make that work for our property owners to have the incentive either through fixing their power rates, through giving them some sort of rental, whatever it is that we decide to do. That is a very important detail to work out. And just in terms of what is possible as well, when we look at 400 megawatts, based on what is in here, based on a non-scientific review by the LADWP staff, that's your words, not mine, there's approximately, it says 700 megawatts of potential solar energy development in Los Angeles, assuming that 25% of the total surface area is usable flat roof space. If we're aiming for 400, that means more than half of the rough available flat roof space. And I assume when I fly over this area, more than half of that is residential. So in terms of looking at some of the calculations on the roof space, and also we don't have to just go on roofs. I think we're looking at drafting this in a way that isn't just roofs, but just for the basin period. We need to dig down in that. And all of this gets to the heart of, I think we need to set ambitious goals. I agree with this goal. I also want to make sure it's the right one that we can actually execute on. So in 4 years from now, eyes wide open, we know that we delivered 400 megawatts. And that's going to be on you guys. Ultimately, it's on us. But in the meantime, it's on you. So making sure that is there. So if we can get that before it comes back to committee and just have a little bit more detail on that. Also a plan on how you think we're able to get that availability. What is the mechanism for either renting that roof space, incentivizing businesses and residential properties to get there? Third, we don't have to do this before council, but I would like to get a report back, and we'll just refer it straight to Energy and Environment on the overall solar program, because I think there's a lot of questions that were asked in here, and it's a great opportunity for the department, which has reported on this already before, but to kind of give us an idea on, the private solar developers continuing to lease space and constructing power and selling to DWP, the possibility of standalone systems even, which some, what the legal impediments or not are for a place like the Mar Vista initiative that we heard, but also our residential program and how. And I know we've worked a lot on the residential program with you directly to get that up and running. My staff has, and that's something we don't need to report on today. But I do want to get that word out because clearly it isn't. Your plans have not yet gotten out there enough, and we need to be doing that a little bit more aggressively. Lastly, in terms of the financing strategy, which I appreciate that you put in here, can you just state for the record now what your sense is in terms of our existing commitment to renewables? Does this keep us in line with what that expectation is to get 20% by 2010 in terms of costs, or do you think this is adding additional costs above and beyond what we would have to do to get to 20% by 2010?
Well, this program is 400 megawatts or 3% by 2013. So it actually goes beyond the 2010.
Take the 2017, goal.
Right. But I think what the initiative calls for is for DWP to come back with a very comprehensive and detailed plan to the council about the various financing mechanisms that are going to be pursued, about how, if at all, base rate increases may be affected, about how the department would go about getting savings in the cost, and all of that. And rather than me make that statement here today at a time that it's, to borrow a phrase, uncooked, I'd like to go back with the budget personnel and others at the department and come back with that comprehensive plan in a way that's mature, and with all aspects fully considered and discussed.
I think part of the urgency of this is we may or may not have a runoff election after the March municipal elections. It's somewhat safe to bet we may not, but we don't know that, and I think we want to protect ourselves to not have to wait an additional year or year and a half to have an election. And I do want to state for the record, and then I think we have to take a vote and wrap things up, but the desire to do this, when people are asking why not do this as an ordinance instead, and why do it as a ballot proposition, for me, engaging all Angelenos on this is very critical, as well as ensuring that whoever comes after us, I assume they're going to be green, but we don't know. We have a green mayor now, and we have a green council now, and locking that in place is an obligation of the city with flexibility on technology, with
you
flexibility
have a green department
on that,
too.
and a green department. Absolutely, I didn't mean to neglect you, Mr. Nahai. Got the greenest general manager we've had. That is environmentally.
that can be taken in all kinds of ways.
I know. I only meant it in a loving way. And with that, I think we're going to. That's why it makes sense to actually go to the voters, but we have to do it in the right way, and it's going to be a tight time frame. So we'd like that follow-up report from DWP distributed to the City Council, answering these additional questions prior to Tuesday. So I know we're going to be burning the midnight oil, and we'll all be working this weekend. Also, Sam Siegel, if you'll raise your hand, anybody who talked about getting involved and who hasn't talked to, we'll make sure Ms. Gruhl in my office and Ms. Perry's office, as well as the mayor's office, are in direct contact with you. But Sam's a good point person, so just go ahead and mob him right afterwards if you want to get involved in some of looking at those details and giving us feedback. And I especially encourage those from the solar industry to do that, because we really are going to be relying on you to see, are these realistic goals? We want you to think of the highest number that if we pushed hard, we could achieve. And if that's beyond 400 megawatts, tell us. If 400 megawatts is the right one, tell us. If we need to, have flexibility there, let us know as well. But we're going to be depending on that feedback. And again, I want to thank the environmental community who brought this a few years to us in a smaller scale, really doing a lot of thinking, and our building trades who have really been at the forefront of saying that green jobs and the environment come together. And I assure all members of different building trades that we will be able to do this in ways that is not about one or another. It's about jobs across, whether you work for the city or whether you work for a contractor, we can get this done. So with that, I would move the report. forward.
And that's fine. And I think maybe the CLA can work with the DWP as it comes before on the report and some of the issues. I think on oversight, it's included. There's going to be oversight and the photovoltaic that looks like there's options if the technology changes. And
yeah, those two things. We should actually ask for the a committee structure, and we can work with the CLA around that. But I think you're right. They would have members of different sectors that have been here, environment, labor, others, as well as within the city family, to look at that as a working group that would be part of an oversight committee or advisory committee if it's outside the city body. So if we can talk to you about that before it comes to council, and then the other one too.
I think that and some of the comments the environmental groups had made to us before were really, I think, part of what you've included, because we've all made the comments, and the on-ramp, off-ramp as far as ramping up as well. So and share as well the importance of all the unions being able to participate there.
Excellent. Mr. Weiss, anything? You good? All right.
Oh, yes.
Yes. The city attorney for the last word. Always the city attorney. We haven't thought of something, right?
Just one final point, and I might say by way of introducing it that if your action will be to move this forward as amended, as the CLA recommends, that answers a number of the questions that we had about some of the provisions that we are going to need to draft for drafting purposes. That's very helpful. You should know that for purposes of presenting to the voters, this needs to be have an element of a charter amendment as well.
Correct.
And that's because of the independence of the department. In order to be able to direct them through an ordinance, it will call for a charter amendment. So it will be, at the very least, have an element of charter amendment and an ordinance that's presented as a referendum to the electorate.
The city attorney could help guide us through that. And
right. But if the committee's recommendation can be that we present back to the council,
yes,
either a charter amendment or a charter amendment with the ordinance, which is the way we
charter amendment
go,
with the ordinance,
then we will proceed accordingly.
Okay. Charter amendment with the ordinance, please. Thank you. All right. Mr. Weiss and myself vote aye, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry I snuck out today without saying goodbye. That I was excused.